Of course, of that first plane hitting about 5:45 Los Angeles time, and that in itself was amazing news. But then to witness the second plane during our live coverage.
We were sitting right here watching it as it occurred. We were
second commercial jet.
The first crash into the first tower, and we saw the commercial jet as it. I mean, we were stunned. We were just in disbelief.
Because again, it just seemed so surreal. You can't imagine anything like this in your lifetime. To see these jets crash into the World Trade Center tower, again, such a landmark there in Manhattan, a symbol there in New York.
And then again, another plane or helicopter, some other aircraft having crashed into the Pentagon. And interestingly enough, after the first plane crashed into the first World Trade Center tower, people were sort of rushing to the scene to try to help out, and law enforcement was trying to push them away, saying, you know what, we are getting reports that a second plane is in the air and is about to crash into the World Trade Center tower, and minutes later, that's exactly what happens.
Oh, and again, this is the scene we have right now out of New York. If you are going to be traveling today out of LAX, out of Burbank, out of Ontario, you're not going to be flying anytime soon because all air traffic has been suspended, grounded at least until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Not just here in Los Angeles, not just here in Southern California.
The entire nation.
The entire country right now as a result of these jets that were hijacked early this morning, and it appears intentionally crashed into the World Trade Center.
And again, we believe one of them may have been, again, nothing has been confirmed at this point, may have been a Boeing 767 American Airlines from Boston to Los Angeles, which brings up the frightening prospect that perhaps there were other people on the plane.
Of course. And again, the third commercial plane crashed into the Pentagon there in Washington, D.C., which explains why you have the two live pictures right there right now at 6:55 Los Angeles time.
This appears to be obviously a well-orchestrated, well-planned act or acts of terrorism. And now we're getting some of our first ground pictures here, and this is
New York apparently. And it looks like a war zone there. We can't even imagine the terror and the chaos there this morning.
Now, we need to put this all into perspective. Of course, we had the Oklahoma City bombing where you had 168 people were killed. Again, we had the World Trade Center bombing back in February of 1993. 6 people died. In that blast, more than 1,000 were injured. This far and away exceeds both of those combined.
We've been getting reports, of course, out of New York from our sister station, WNYW, also CNN. We will be cutting away for a network live report here in a few seconds, but we want to let you know you are watching the Fox 11 Morning News as we head into Good Day LA, the 7 o'clock hour. You have to excuse us. We are looking at these live pictures, and we're still trying to make out exactly what we're looking at because we hadn't seen these pictures before. We'll be getting more, though, from the network as we go to them in just a few seconds.
A network update right now.
This is a Fox News special report.
This is Fox News coverage event of one of the most dastardly deeds ever to happen on U.S. soil. As you can see, there is now just one of the 2 twin trade towers. The World Trade Center has been attacked. One of those towers has just collapsed. You can see the smoke and debris. These are live shots of the smoke and debris from one of the trade towers. Moments ago, that trade tower disappeared. It vanished under the weight of a catastrophe unlike that we've ever seen in the United States history. Approximately 1 hour ago, a little more, a twin-engine plane crashed into one of those 2 towers. One of those 2 towers burst into flames. About 20 minutes later, another twin-engine jet airliner crashed into the adjoining tower, and as you can just see, moments ago, one of those twin trade towers vanished, disappeared into the streets below. We don't know how many thousands of people have been affected, but undoubtedly there are thousands. There are thousands of casualties. There are people on the streets below. There were offices in the streets below. It is chaos in lower Manhattan, though workers, rescue workers, are trying desperately to clear out the debris to save as many people as is possible. But under these circumstances, we can only guess what damage is taking place in lower Manhattan. We will show you scenes of the destruction of one of the World Trade Center towers in just a moment, but for now we want to tell you about yet another attack on the heart of the United States. The Pentagon has been attacked. The Pentagon, as you see on the left, is in flames, is engulfed in acrid, thick smoke. Undoubtedly the smoke will spread throughout Manhattan, throughout Washington, D.C., as the smoke, as you can see from the destruction of the World Trade Center, is spreading throughout Manhattan. These two attacks clearly coordinated. The attacks on the Twin Trade Centers were coordinated. They took place within 20 minutes of each other. The city of New York is in a lockdown status. All traffic in and out of New York has been stopped. In and out of the subways, the various bridges, the tunnels have all been stopped. Indeed, air traffic in the United States of America has now been shut down as well. All planes that were flying in the United States and adjoining areas have been diverted to the nearest possible airport. As a result of this tragedy, one can only guess the effects, the long-term effects. At this point, any speculation on who is to blame for these dastardly terrorist efforts is only speculation. But once again, all authorities are suggesting that indeed these are terrorist acts. There was one plane that was hijacked this morning, an American Airlines flight from Boston to Los Angeles. It was hijacked. A second plane, a twin 737 jet, crashed into the World Trade Center about 20 minutes after the first one crashed. Once again, you're looking at the results of that devastating crash, the results, the effects of which are only now beginning to unfold in the city of Manhattan. As you can see, all over Manhattan, including on top of where this particular reporter is reporting, is now covered with smoke, with ash, with debris. The people who were affected by the absolute disintegration of one of those Twin Trade Center towers, the people who were unlucky enough to be below that, clearly devastated by this effect. As you can see on the left hand of your screen, the military hub of the United States of America also attacked on this day, September 11th, in the year 2001. The military and the financial capitals of the United States attacked by terrorists. The nation is in a state of lockdown. All available armed forces personnel are working as hard as they can to prevent another terrorist attack from taking place. The President of the United States was not in the nation's capital while this devastation was being wreaked upon our country. The President was in Sarasota, Florida, speaking at an elementary school in front of children. We have video of the President's initial reaction to these twin terrorist attacks. But first, Rick Leventhal is reporting to us, our own Rick Leventhal. Let's listen in. Rick?
Everything was locked up, and then I came out, and everything was filled with ash, and it looks like I'm in a surreal movie.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse?
To me, it sounded like an explosion. Then the building, the rolling sound sounded like the building collapsed.
Were there other people? There must have been a lot of people on the ground nearby when it happened.
Oh, where that happened, there was mostly law enforcement. I don't think there were many civilians there. I don't know.
Don't move, Pat. How many people would you say were on the ground when the building exploded or collapsed?
Law enforcement, over on that corner there, I don't know. There might have been 100, 150. I don't know.
What's your full name, officer?
Police Officer Gronowski.
All right. Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Rick, what did you thought that whole time?
Huh? This is Church Street. It looks like a snowstorm hit. There's thick ash on the ground, lots of it. pandemonium here a short time ago when the building did collapse, or whatever it was that happened. It was a huge explosion, a huge rumbling cloud of smoke and fire came across Church Street and then started billowing this way, and all we saw was people running in this direction. Everyone, law enforcement, people, a woman pushing a baby carriage. This is actually, we believe, debris from one of the planes that hit one of the towers on the World Trade Center. The FBI is here, as you can see. They had roped this area off. They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt. We'll try and talk to some of these guys. Can you tell me what you saw, what you heard?
So no.
You all right?
All right, thank
Where were you, sir, when that happened?
Right on the street.
What did you see? What did you hear?
It felt like another plane coming. Everybody took cover
Yes.
to run. We ran down the subway, but the dust followed us down there.
Were there a lot of people in the subway?
No, not that many, because they already had evacuated before.
Did you see people, anyone in danger, anyone getting hit when this...
Not back there, yeah, but I was running. I mean, there was nothing you can do, because you just saw the thing coming right over.
Have you seen, were you able to see the tower after?
No. What do you mean, since it happened now? Since the fire?
Look at this guy, look at this guy. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The streets have been shut down. There was very little traffic on the streets except for emergency vehicles going one way or the other. So there was not a lot of vehicle traffic in this area, but there were a lot of pedestrians on almost every single corner taking photographs and just looking at the building, which was still smoking and still on fire. A lot of police officers at the back.
Officials up there that were right near the building.
Where were you when the explosion occurred, when the plane hit the building?
I saw it from my office, as a matter of fact, down the Lower East Side.
So you came here
Yes.
to check
We
it
can
out?
help. No, what do you mean? To see if we can help, but this is...
Yeah. This poor woman. Wow. There are people running. There's a sound of a plane, another plane in the air. And just the sound of a plane.
Sergeant.
All right. What are you guys doing right now? What's your assignment? What's your assignment?
Help people.
Are there a lot of injured? The dust is still thick in the air. What that guy is covered with is this stuff that's all over the street. Just thick soot, ash. Just came roaring down here in a huge cloud from the World Trade Center. You see just the survivors, if you will. Are you able to talk? Can we just talk to you about what happened?
I was back there when it exploded.
You were right there at the building?
Yes, and how many people trapped?
A lot of people trapped. EMT. This guy needs help. Oh boy. Oh boy. I mean, if this is what it looks like here, I can't even begin to imagine what it looks like down there. Can you talk to us for a minute? Just tell us what you saw, what you heard. How you feel? You all right?
No, not at all.
I feel bad approaching these people. I mean, they're covered. They're obviously in pain. Were you down here when that collapse occurred? Where were you?
Did you see the building collapse? What happened?
Jesus, I don't know. I saw the smoke.
Look, come out here.
You know, I don't know if we're on, but I'll tell you one thing. Hey, watch your back. I'll tell you one thing. Watching police officers run for cover, that's a wake-up call.
right, this is Steve Edwards in the FOX11 newsroom. Ordinarily, Good Day LA would be on at this moment. We're continuing our coverage of the coordinated terrorist attacks against the heart and soul of the United States. You are seeing something that you would see in a movie and not believe. The World Trade Center, the two towers are now just one of the two towers minutes ago just crumbled as a result of an airplane hitting it. There's only one standing now. And as you saw Rick Leventhal in the streets of New York there, the story is yet to be told from a couple of angles. One is these attacks are coordinated. First, it happened in New York at the World Trade Towers, a plane hitting one of the towers. 18 minutes later, a second plane hitting a second tower. Then, later on in Washington, D.C., at the heart of our military, at the Pentagon, an explosion. Some reporters claiming it looked like it was a plane hitting it, others saying a helicopter, but an explosion and something. Now we're taking a look at Washington, D.C., and you see the volume of smoke. This is not New York, this is Washington and Virginia that we're looking at here. And what we are seeing is certainly a day that will never be forgotten in American history. Mark it down, this date in December of the year 2001, in September. Remarkable. It's hard to take it all in. This is the larger scope as we start to learn the stories of what's happened inside these buildings, especially the trade towers in downtown New York at Church Street. It is only going to get worse. We don't have any preliminary reports yet on numbers of people. The first explosion hit about 8:45. You would have to think in downtown New York that is late enough in the day that a lot of the people who work in those buildings would be there, not all of them, but a lot of them. Also, what about damage around and injuries around the building? Rick Leventhal on the streets of New York said just a couple of minutes ago, when you see New York City cops running for cover, that is a wake-up call and as big a statement as you can make. Here is the one of the two towers that are standing right now. All right, here's now the split screen. And we're going to pick, let's listen into New York right now.
Everything just went black. Everything came down, glass started popping. People got hurt, stuff went on top of them. And it was a big explosion. Everything got dark, real dark, like snow. You can see behind me, oh, this is not snow. This is all from the building. It was a terrible nightmare.
Where exactly were you standing when this happened?
I was standing right in front of the World Trade Center.
So you were down the block here? And
right
you came
there in the
running
middle.
this way?
Right, yeah.
Did you get hurt at all?
No, not me.
Did you see anyone around you getting caught up in it?
Yeah, I was with the firemen. We got hurt. We all went inside to this dark. We was inside the building where everything happened, but we came out alive. But
what's your name?
My name is Dr. Angel.
Were you able to assist anyone before this happened?
Yes, I did. I help a lot of patients. A lot of them.
Well, there are a lot more people that need help now. So if you're capable, maybe you should...
yes, I'm going to go back. I lost my ID, but I try to go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for talking to us.
Thanks.
All right. That's what Rick Leventhal has for us down in Lower Manhattan, where chaos and utter confusion reigns. This is clearly a national catastrophe. There will be...
As we cut in and out of our various resources of coverage in New York and in Washington, we want to add some notes to you. The White House has been evacuated. There is a report, the Secret Service says, that there was a credible threat of a terrorist attack against the White House. The White House was evacuated.
Some eyewitnesses said to have seen a plane doing a circle
around the White
House.
The president was in Florida for an educational speech. He is heading back to Washington. Of course, he is going to be flying on Air Force One, and you know how carefully they are going over that plane right now before the president gets on it, and how protected that plane will be in flight back to Washington, D.C. Obviously, coordinated attacks, two planes hitting the two towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, then the Pentagon immediately afterwards. We don't know how many lives have been lost here, and we don't know indeed if this is the end, signals the end of these attacks yet, because these apparently are quite coordinated at this point. At this point, we're also hearing that not only are the airports in and around New York closed down, all the airports are closed down.
Have you ever lived through that experience before?
Never. This has never happened. I mean, we can report about all the other tragedies and terrorist-induced acts, including the horror at Oklahoma City, where 168 people were killed, but we don't have any numbers here, and you don't want to... let's pick this up in New York right now.
I saw everybody in the street react first. People crying, people on the ground, everybody lying down. And then I looked up and I saw this huge plume of smoke and the tower just crumbling, and it just turned into a huge plume of smoke. And next thing you know, there's smoke in one tower, and that's what we're seeing right here. So, and obviously there's people are worried about the press agents and everybody else that went the other way as everybody wants went this way.
When you saw this collapse taking place, could you see if there were a lot of people on the ground near the building as it was happening?
I was further north than you were, but I was dead looking at 6th Avenue, the view you see of both towers as you come down 6th Avenue.
Right.
So, and then most of this fallout stops about 4 blocks back.
Give me a look down this way, Pat. You know, it does sort of look like beyond a few blocks down, it looks almost clear. But it's anything but.
This is Steve Edwards again, and there is now a report of some kind of explosion on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. We're looking right now at pictures. I don't know if it's of that explosion or the Pentagon explosion, but we're getting reports.
That's the Pentagon.
That is the Pentagon.
But Capitol Hill was evacuated. We just don't know the timing.
Who was there, nor do we know the degree of the explosion right now. All right, let's pick this up.
We're told, the second plane, we saw it on television.
Everything.
All right, thanks a lot. This is...
In case you're just joining us, this is the aftermath of a horrific event that began unfolding about an hour and 20 minutes ago. A jet plane slammed into the side of Tower 2 of the World Trade Center. Then a few minutes later, another jet slammed into Tower 1. The second Tower 1, I should say, the upper floors have collapsed. They're absolutely gone.
Just give me a sense of what it looks like there. Are there many, many people on the street?
The sidewalks, people are calm. I think most people don't really know what's going on. Most people haven't been watching the news. But the sidewalks are definitely full of people where, you know, normally at this time of the morning there wouldn't be that many people out here. And as I say, I've been passed by numerous members of Congress and senators and staff, you know, who I know well, who have been coming past me asking me what's going on.
Okay, why don't you hang around here and continue to report on that. Let me just, again, for those viewers who are joining us at about 20 minutes past 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, let me just briefly recap. Attacks on 2 American cities, New York and the Capitol in Washington. It began at about 8:45 Eastern Time when a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. That building, that was the building hit first. And then about a half an hour later, a second plane, and I'm not sure if we have the tape available. If we do, we'll show it to you. You can see the second plane coming in from the right side of your screen, going into the tower itself. This is an extraordinary and troubling piece of tape. The Justice Department is...
All right, that is Aaron Brown reporting. This is Steve Edwards back here on Fox 11, and we're getting reports now that one Palestinian organization is claiming that the responsibility identified as the Palestinian group, the DFLP. Let's go back.
Or the second time.
I've seen at least 14 people jumping out of windows. It's horrific. I can't believe this is happening.
Anything else that you saw? Were you there for the second hit by the plane?
About 10 minutes later, the second building went off.
Did you see it?
Yes, I saw it. It just blew up. A big explosion. People started running. It was just chaos everywhere. People jumping out. People just kept jumping and jumping and jumping. And you could still see they were alive because they were flailing around.
The FBI has already stepped in to investigate. It could be possibly a terrorist strike.
It could be. It could be because the first one went off and then 10 minutes later this just blew up out of nowhere.
Hard to think that that would just be accidental.
No, I don't think it would be accidental.
Back it up, folks. Back it up. Penny?
Johanneman.
Spell your name.
Johanneman.
And you were working there?
Yes, I was right there. I was down in the basement, came down, all of a sudden the elevator blew up, smoke. I dragged the guy out, his skin was hanging off, and I dragged him out, and I helped him out to the ambulance.
Thank you.
Right?
All right, here's a shot of the standing World Trade Tower. These are the famous landmark. The Twin Towers are no longer Twin Towers. If you're just waking up, you will have a feeling of disbelief. As we were reporting to you in downtown New York, one of the 2 trade towers is gone. It was hit by a plane. It has crumbled and fallen. The other was hit by a plane as well. It is still standing. You are hearing the stories that are just coming in now of the horrors and tragedies going on inside those buildings, or that building at this point, people jumping out of windows. That's what's happening in New York. Go ahead, Dorothy, what have you got there?
It's just coming in on the wires that something has happened at the State
horrible.
Department.
You work in the area?
I work for Merrill Lynch in the World Financial Center. Right across the street, World Financial Center is right across the street from the Marriott Hotel. And when we were walking by, you look at the Marriott Hotel, I don't even think it's there anymore. So, well,
I don't know what else to ask you. I mean, it's just an incredible story. It's just horrible.
As we cut in and out, Dorothy was just saying of a report that a senior government official speaking on condition of anonymity said there apparently was an incident at the State Department. We don't know what yet. We hear it might have been a plane. And again, these reports are coming in, and each one sounds wild and speculative, and they have so far all turned out to be true.
And we should mention that the Pentagon was also hit by a plane. There's a fire going on there now, explosion.
One of the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff
According to witnesses, according to witnesses right now, a third plane might be approaching the World Trade Tower. So certainly the cameras are on there. We don't know how long ago this report came in. Police are telling that to bystanders around the building, perhaps in an attempt to have people move away from the buildings, but a third plane being thought to go in the area. And again, you're talking about not very much mileage by air from either Newark Airport or Teterboro or
That's what I was going
LaGuardia.
to say to you, Steve. The Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said another plane may have been hijacked from Newark. They don't know which plane this is, if this is the plane at the Pentagon, but another plane may have been hijacked.
Apparently, we know that one of the two planes that crashed into the World Trade Towers originated in Boston.
An American Airlines plane.
On its way to Los Angeles. As we see the view from where Aaron Brown and the Fox team are looking at the damage in New York there. Another plane apparently from Newark. Now that report came in a little bit earlier, that might have been the second plane, and everything is sketchy right now because things are happening so quickly.
Pentagon.
This is the shot of the Pentagon. There's an explosion. It was hit either by an airplane or a helicopter. The reason I step back to say specifically because we've had some conflicting reports. Most of the
People
reports
who have
saying a
seen
plane
it
now.
said it was a plane.
A plane, yeah. That's what we're
If you have any other way, perhaps email. If you have any other way of contacting your loved ones, try and do it without using the telephone, because telephone lines in New York.
All right, once again, here is the Pentagon. We're saying an airplane. One eyewitness said he saw the tail of a large airliner, not just a plane, but a large airliner hitting the Pentagon just outside of Washington, D.C. This is the view from Washington.
Steve, assuming that this was a...
All right, a senior law enforcement official is reporting that a car bomb exploded outside the State Department. Again, this is the State Department in Washington, not to be confused with the Pentagon. All right, now the shot we're seeing is of the World Tower in New
We
York.
see the second one bang into it. We're on the roof of it. We're a block away. I mean, what's going through your mind when you see this happen? You see bodies flying out of the sky, and you can't do nothing about it. You tell me. You tell me what you think. I mean, my heart's in my mouth. I mean, I pray for these people. There's no words to describe what's going on out there. I mean, you see bodies just coming a half hour later, still coming out of the goddamn sky. Devastating. Devastating. I can't imagine anything worse than this. There's got to be... I can't imagine. You know, everybody on the plane must have died. The floor, I got friends of mine on 104th floor, friends on other buildings. I just spoke to one of my friends a half hour prior to that, getting ready to go upstairs to go to work. It's devastating. I mean, I've seen a lot of construction accidents. I've seen a lot of bad things happen. I've never seen a jet fall out of the sky into a building, no less once, but twice. Devastating.
I want to bring into the conversation General Al Haig, the former Secretary of State. General Haig, at a time like this, how does America respond prudently, with the proper amount of caution, and yet with whatever force needs to be applied?
Well, first we have to know the full limits of this tragedy, and it's unprecedented, of course. But we have to stay above all united and calm and ready to take resolute action, which sometimes we have failed to do in the recent past, when the perpetrators are uncovered, and we have many, many indicators of precisely who they are. This was too broadly based a terrorist act to be just a few crazies. This is a terrorist movement, and we know where they're located today. And obviously, as a nation, we're going to have to take action against them.
But clearly that action is going to be some days, if not weeks or months away.
Oh, it has to be very carefully assessed before any action is taken, of course. And we have to be reasonably assured that those that we are moving against are the perpetrators. And I think we know where to center our look. All we have to do is look at the world today with the Palestinian and bin Laden groups.
Who are the terrorists that you think are the most likely suspects?
Well, I'm not going to speculate because I don't have inside knowledge, and it would be rather foolish to do that. But I do think we have the means to assess it, and there will be many statements, many parties claiming credit, somehow already have done so, for the World Trade Center bombing.
Clearly, with what's going on in the skies, where even apparently innocent civilian airliners can be employed as weapons of terrorists, what is our military doing right now, General Haig? What should they be doing?
Well, they have to be on full alert, and I would have hoped that we would get some aircraft up in the air to enforce the ban on flights. That has to be done if it has not already been done, and I'm sure it has been.
We saw the same thing.
All right, General Alexander Haig, former Secretary of State, thanks for being with us. Rick Leventhal once again with our producer Carlos Van Meek is in Lower Manhattan. You cannot even see the sky there because of the soot, the ash, the crumbled concrete that is continuing to rain down after one of the two towers of the World Trade Center, the upper floors, collapsed. This after this apparent terrorist attack this morning that sent a large jetliner, perhaps two large jetliners, slamming into the Twin Towers.
Come over this way, Pat.
You can see the chaos.
We can see the top of the building from here. Oh, yeah. Oh, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes. Oh. When it comes down, we're... All right. We do need to put it down now. I think we need to put it down now. Here we go. You get that?
What you're looking at now, we believe, is tape of the first building collapsing earlier. If you're just tuned in, you hear the tragedy and the drama. I believe this is from earlier, was it not?
I think so. They should take the live down because that was the...
That was live.
That was the second tower.
The second tower has just collapsed.
Oh, my God.
It is worse than we thought. The second tower just collapsed.
Oh.
When I didn't see the tower behind the smoke, I got that sick feeling.
The Twin Towers of New York, the two towers,
Oh, my gosh.
110-story high that mark the downtown skyline of New York.
No longer exist.
And one of the symbols of New York City and of the United States, as Dorothy just said, no longer exists.
Capitalism
When
itself.
you were just hearing Rick Leventhal saying, there it goes, that's the second one. I thought that was the tape of the first, and then I realized he was saying, get out, get out.
What you're looking at now, that empty space, is where the Twin Towers. Now, within the drama of the building falling, you have to ask the question and hope the answer is that they're all out of there. But among the fire and the chaos going on, you don't know how many people were trapped in those two towers. What kind of
And you're talking
tragedies?
about people on the ground?
What kind of tragedies of people who were trapped in there, the people on the ground, as this...
And those are not easy buildings to get out of.
I mean,
they were trying to evacuate the second.
Although, you know, what can you say about 110-story buildings, and it happened at the top, but after what happened in '93, when the bombings took place in the garage there, that these buildings were gone over as completely as you can for escape routes and safety and everything else, but nothing, obviously, will get in the way of this. These are probably were the most analyzed buildings in terms of safety after what happened in 1993, when it was a remarkable tragedy. 6 people died. At this point, one can't even speculate how many lives have been lost. how many
Well, then
lives have
about
been irrevocably
6
changed.
people were killed, about 1,000 people were injured, and that was just in the basement of the building.
And that was, if you can say this, relatively minor compared to... Now, there is a tableau for you. On the left side over there, the Empire State Building,
It's hard to believe
which was the
that's New York.
former tallest building in the world and representative of New York. And off to the right, as you look down toward the end of the Hudson River and New York Harbor, the Twin Towers, 110 stories high, 1,300 plus feet, I believe, gone. They do not exist any longer.
And this happened just before 9. The first plane crashed into the second tower just before 9,
right.
so you expect
All right.
a lot of people in there.
Yeah, let's go back right now to what we saw live and couldn't believe. We thought it was tape. This is now tape of the second tower as you saw it live here just a couple minutes ago. There goes the second tower. The first one collapsed earlier. The second one, you just joined us this morning at about 6:45 our time, 5:45, I'm sorry, 5:45 our time, 8:45 in New York. A plane hit one of the Twin Towers, and about 18 minutes later, a second plane hit the second tower, and you are now seeing the results of those plane crashes, coordinated terrorism against the tallest buildings in New York City. They are both gone. We do not know how many people have been killed from this, how many injured. We really won't know for quite some time, but the numbers, there's no other way to say it, are going to amount to record tolls. While this is going on in Washington, soon afterwards, a plane crashed into the Pentagon. A car bomb exploded outside the State Department. The White House has been evacuated because of what the Secret Service is calling credible threats to the White House, terrorist threats. All of that going on now. This is
Well,
still
President Bush was in Florida talking to kids at a school, and now
Right.
he's en route back to
He's en route back in Air Force One. All right, here's a number to start with. Somewhere around 50,000 people are employed in the Trade Center, in the two towers there that no longer exist. The first plane hit at 8:45. At 8:45, you would say that certainly not everyone is there. But
a lot of people.
substantial number of people in those buildings. That's in the buildings. And there's the collateral damage around the buildings from things falling. And you heard earlier, before the second one fell, Rick Leventhal saying that, interviewing somebody who said when the building fell, it kind of fell for 4 blocks. So who knows? Yet if you are just waking up and looking at this, you think this is some kind of trick photography.
Yeah.
And it is not. This is New York City, ladies and gentlemen. This is downtown New York. We can show you all the smoke here. We can show you where the Pentagon is, it's a similar situation with smoke in New York City and in Washington, D.C. Obviously, coordinated attacks. Are they over yet?
Well, and Steve, you've mentioned the Pentagon and the State Department. There was also a report of some sort of loud explosion outside the Capitol. And we don't have any details on
Correct,
that. That's all
outside the
we've heard.
Capitol. Let's see what we can get. Here in Los Angeles, police are in tactical alert right now. You can imagine the military is on full alert across the country at this point because nobody knows what's going to happen next. Obviously, as much aid and help it will be sent into New York and into Washington as possible. There you see a chopper fly across the screen there. This unbelievable tableau in New York City right now. This is not a movie. This is real.
Now, we had heard just a moment ago that the Palestinian group, DFLP, had claimed responsibility for this. Now, an official of that group denies responsibility
Right.
for the World Trade Center.
And anyone can call a news outlet and say anything at this point.
Right, and that's why preliminary reports...
And it's hard not to react because there is something happening every second.
Yes, and right, we may still be in the midst of what is going on here. And while you heard one of the reporters asking Alexander Haig, who said, the first thing that comes to mind would be
Osama bin Laden
and the Palestinians, but then he also said we don't have enough information to go on. And I do remind you that immediately after the Oklahoma City bombing, that was the assumption that was made, and that wasn't the story at all. All bridges and tunnels into Manhattan have been closed. Manhattan has been effectively sealed off. Yeah, effectively sealed off right now.
And they're evacuating more buildings in Washington, the Treasury. Most buildings in Washington are being evacuated.
All right, we're getting reports now from Fox News that another hijacked plane apparently is on its way to Washington, D.C. So we will follow this report. We hope that it's a report that means nothing, but so far the story of this day has been, when we think it's speculation, it has been true. When we thought it was on tape, it was real. That which is unbelievable is happening today. So we have a report now of a hijacked plane apparently headed toward Washington, D.C. All right, we're going to rejoin the Fox network. We'll be in and out with all the information we can get you.
Further terrorist acts. Our shot from Rick Leventhal, who is on the left side of the screen, he, of course, was there as the Second World Trade Center collapsed, is back. I don't know if we have audio from Rick. Let's just listen for a moment to see if we can hear from Rick Leventhal, who was on the ground. No, apparently we don't hear it. There's a little bit of natural sound, but as soon as we get Rick Leventhal back, we will put him on. Rick was mentioning that that area covered in a white dust film, not unlike that which is seen after a volcanic eruption, but of course this a man-made devastation, made in fact, as we can tell you now, apparently by a organization called the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is claiming credit, as if anyone would want to claim credit for an act of terrorism more dastardly than any act of terrorism ever committed on the face of the planet. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have directly been involved, if not killed, by this act of terrorism. To recap, this happened at approximately 8:45 a.m. New York City time. That is East Coast time, of course. The Trade Center at that time would have been filled with thousands of people, tens of thousands of people work in the Trade Center. Of course, that being perhaps the worst possible time for an event such as this to take place. One can only guess that few survived the collapse of the Trade Center, the first Trade Center collapse, and then just moments ago, the second Trade Center collapse. People, in addition to those in the World Trade Center, people on the ground, obviously affected, buildings surrounding that location in the World Trade Center, very tightly packed. For anyone who's spent time in Lower Manhattan, you know very well there is very little space for anything, has been for about a century now, as the focus, the financial center focus for the world has taken place in that section. There are hundreds and thousands of buildings, of offices in that location in Manhattan, and the devastation raining upon them from the collapse of the World Trade Center has undoubtedly taken its toll as well. Once again, Washington, D.C. is also in a state of very, very high alert, as the Pentagon has been affected. A portion of the Pentagon apparently has collapsed as a result of another explosion. One can only speculate as to the coordination that took place between what happened
an hour
in
and a half
Manhattan.
ago. We heard the first report of a plane hitting one of these towers, and then another plane taking a beeline straight into it. We understand the reports are it was a plane from Boston filled with people that had been hijacked, a 767 jetliner that went into the second tower, and now about an hour after those two explosions and the fire and the plumes and people actually jumping from the buildings, both the north and the south tower of the World Trade Center gone, and all we're left with is smoke, people running from what is an awful situation. We will come back live when you get in touch with us. We can't get in touch with you by cell phone, only by radio. Any questions? Reporting live on the West Side Highway. Michelle Charles with ABC7. I would.
Above it. Once again.
All right, do you see that is the Statue of Liberty
right
on
there
the
to the left.
lower left? And look at that tableau as you look across New York Harbor. That is downtown Manhattan, the financial capital of the world, home to hundreds of thousands of people who work and live there.
Absolutely paralyzed. The skyline that is normally
This is the most famous skyline in the world.
You
the
can't
tip
even
of
see it.
the tip of Manhattan. You can't see it, and the two behemoths that absolutely tower over it are gone.
Look how that smoke dwarfs the Statue of Liberty.
The
How
two
small.
trade tower buildings are gone. We're getting reports out of New York, also out of Washington. Dorothy, why don't you update us on the situation around Washington?
You know, Steve, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at this, what's coming in New York just for a moment, that authorities are saying, and this is all guessing and speculation as we know, that they were trying to evacuate 50,000 people who work in the Twin Towers.
But
And it
many
says
were-
many were thought to have been trapped.
I would hope as we hear that, Dorothy, that 50,000 people is the total number of
We're
people.
talking about people who work in those buildings
Yeah,
on
as
any
opposed to
given
who,
day.
who was in, but as...
But that second part of
as-
the sentence makes me very nervous. Many were
thought to be trapped. And it's been suggested, and there's no question, we're talking about thousands of people.
Coordinating any possible U.S. response, as well as trying to gather intelligence information, counterintelligence information, and essentially act as a clearinghouse from all the various intelligence agencies in Washington. There have been reports of precautions being taken at the Central Intelligence Agency in McLean, Virginia, at the National Security Agency. But again, here's the Pentagon. While most of the Pentagon and its 23,000 employees have been evacuated, the National Military Command Center at the base of the Pentagon is still here. You can actually smell the smoke now in virtually all of the hallways at the Pentagon, and fire trucks and sirens going off on the south side. But where we are on the northern side of the Pentagon in one of the outer rings, my producer Chris Wright says he could not feel any of the aftershocks of the explosion. There was no noise when the plane apparently crashed this morning at 9:40. But again, most of the Pentagon has been cleared out. Smoke pretty thick here in the halls. But some officials, of course, still at the Pentagon in the offices that are designed for some of these very scenarios. John?
All right, David Schuster at the Pentagon, thanks very much. It appears, and we had the report from Brian Wilson in Washington not too long ago, it appears, Brian told us that that there was a report of a hijacked plane south of Washington, D.C. and headed toward the nation's capital. Now, it appears that that is the flight that went down about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. We told you that there was a confirmation from the Somerset County Airport. Authorities are saying that that may be the plane that Brian Wilson spoke of. Let's take you back again to New York and an absolutely horrific scene in lower Manhattan. The entire lower end of the island covered in smoke and floating debris. And what's missing? The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, 110 stories high. You are looking at the pictures from, the last half hour or so as the first tower simply collapsed on itself. This, and look at the debris raining down on other buildings. Imagine the horror. Now, here comes
There's the second building right there. This happened earlier. The towers are gone, and now we'll join CNN.
Explosion, they started seeing patients here. What I'm hearing, and I have not been in the ER yet, is that they have at least 100 patients or more, that several of those people were dealing with issues of smoke inhalation, many of them throwing up, that there were several people who went directly to the operating room who are in very critical condition. Outside the hospital, people are coming in trying to help, to donate blood. Essentially, everybody here at this hospital is in a state of shock. I mean, I walked into the testing area, and the women here who usually just draw blood are also extraordinarily moved and shocked. They're moving in and out of the emergency room to try to help as many people as possible. Now, outside a block, about a block away from here, where you really had a bird's eye view of the two Twin Towers, which are the landmarks of New York City, people stopped, the entire traffic has stopped. People have poured out of buildings and were watching, in fact, as one of the towers collapsed. And then you're really seeing a lot of people trying to move north, away from any place downtown near the World Trade Center area. People are just walking. The subways are stopped entirely all around the area of the World Trade Center. You can't get below 14th Street. And there just feels to be like a massive exodus of people walking north to get away from the area as far away as they possibly can.
Maria, I know Kitty Pilgrim is with you as well.
That's right, I'm right
Kitty, tell us what you've been able to report on.
I'm actually reporting from Kennedy Airport at the United Terminal, and I was here this morning flying out. When they made an announcement about 20 of 10 that all flights were grounded, people thought it was just a normal course of airport business these days, and so there was not much of a reaction, and then the news started to trickle through. It was not an official announcement made over the intercom.
Kitty, let me interrupt for just a second. The Associated Press is reporting that federal officials fear that a second hijacked plane or another hijacked plane is headed towards the Pentagon, and I'm looking for the time on this. We will continue to check that out. Kitty, I apologize for interrupting. Why don't you continue? Did we lose her?
This is Steve Edwards. Let me interrupt as well for a moment. We had a report briefly moments ago that officials at Somerset County Airport outside about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh say an airliner went down, crashed, and exploded. Whether this is
It was described as a large plane.
Yeah, whether this was the plane that Aaron Brown was just discussing now as reported on its way toward the Pentagon, we are not sure. But these are facts that may very well fit into the scenario here. That a plane crashed, was it shot down? We don't know. We don't know. But the fact is that a large airliner crashed about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, and certainly that would be in the direction of going toward Washington, D.C. Let's pick up this coverage again.
The United Terminal, the attendants have been asked to stay. And again, there's still several hundred people standing around not knowing what to do. No one's even speaking.
And again, for people, Kitty, thank you, not familiar with New York, Kennedy is the major airport handling international flights into the city. It is also an enormous complex of 7 or 8 or 9 terminals.
That's exactly right. And in fact, the baggage has been unloaded into a separate terminal from where I am, and they're asking people to walk over, pick up their bags, and take them out. It's virtually impossible to get from place to place at Kennedy, and of course, bridges and tunnels into Manhattan are inaccessible at this point. No one has anywhere to go.
Kitty, thank you. And we'll get back to you. Chris Plant at the Pentagon has more. He joins us on the phone. Chris, what can you tell us?
Hi, this is Chris Plant at the Pentagon.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Chris, we hear you. Go ahead.
All right. The area to the west of the Pentagon has been evacuated further back by law enforcement and military officials as they anticipate a second aircraft arriving at the Pentagon. It's been deemed to be threatening enough where I saw at least one F-16 fighter jet in the air over the Pentagon headed to the west where the plane was reportedly coming in from. Again, they're saying here that a second aircraft is expected to arrive at the Pentagon sometime soon. They take it seriously enough that they have scrambled at least one fighter jet that I saw, probably either from the D.C. Air National Guard or the Maryland Air National Guard, both of which fly F-16s. The west front of the building of the Pentagon along Route 27 has now partially collapsed. About a 60-foot section of the building laterally has collapsed the entire 5 stories. The building is obviously, the fire is traveling inward in the building toward the courtyard, and this wedge, as they call it, of the Pentagon, the westernmost wedge, which was just refurbished and was in fact reinforced for terrorist attack and for just this sort of thing. I know that there were a significant number of injuries. I'm unaware of any numbers on fatalities at this point. People here who came from the building are suggesting that surely there were fatalities, but no one could confirm any. I have spoken to a number of people that I know who pulled people out of rubble. There were severe injuries. There are a number of helicopters here evacuating injured people, and I am told by one senior military source that the plane in the side of the building has been tentatively identified as a Boeing 767, a full-sized airliner, Boeing 767. But that at this point they're waiting for the arrival of a possible second plane, which has been deemed to be a threat, and as I said, fighter jets have been scrambled to address that matter.
Chris, stay with us. That's extraordinary bit of information coming out of Washington now. Let me add to something that we said earlier. We have a report now that a large plane crashed this morning north of the Somerset County Airport, which is in western Pennsylvania, not too terribly far from Pittsburgh, about 80 miles or so. Boeing 767 jet. Don't know whose airline it was, whose airplane it was, and we don't have any details beyond that which I have just given you. We don't know if this is somehow connected to what has gone on in New York and Washington, but we do know that another plane has crashed, this one about 80 miles south of Pittsburgh, or at least to the southeast of Pittsburgh. Rose Arce, one of our producers here in New York, joins us on the phone. Rose, what do you have that's new?
Yes, just a while ago, I think you saw that collapse of the top of the World Trade Center. Well, it looks like a large chunk of that debris has hit a building very close by, about 2 blocks away next to an elementary school, causing another explosion. So for the last few minutes, I've been watching people running from that direction. There was one man, I'm not child, you saw on the street. I've seen several emergency service workers carrying other emergency service workers from the scene. There's a haze everywhere. It's very, very difficult to see, but there has been the whole area has been covered by soot and ash. It looks almost like snow. So as people are coming up the street running from the scene of this new explosion, you can see them slipping on the ash and literally having to drag each other up the street. There's an incredible amount of panic down here in downtown Manhattan as people are realizing that they really need to leave the area entirely after spending the last hour or so just watching this from afar.
Rose, stay with us. Terrific work. Let me throw another couple of pieces of information out as we continue to put this all together into a straight line if we can. The United Nations has been evacuated.
All day.
The United Nations building on the east side of Manhattan has been evacuated. The city is in, this is election day, a primary election for mayor and city council races here in New York. That election has been postponed until further notice. Obviously, we are in the middle of an extraordinary catastrophe that started about 8:45 Eastern Time here in New York when one plane crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. About a half an hour after that, as people were converging, as fire and police and rescue teams were converging on the scene, a second plane appeared to the west of the Trade Center buildings and slammed into the second tower. That's what you just saw. Fire shooting out the north and east side of the tower. Shortly after that, we began to get reports of events taking place in Washington. An explosion which first came to us as a fire at the Pentagon. Now there's a report of a second hijacked plane heading towards the Pentagon. It is believed that one of the planes, perhaps both, but one of them we have been told was an American Airlines 767 that hit one of the Trade Center towers. About a half an hour after that, perhaps a little bit longer, lose track of time a little bit in these situations, the first tower, or let me correct that, the south tower, the second tower, the one to the left collapsed. It collapsed in a cascade of smoke and spark, and what we cannot tell you is if there was a second explosion that caused that collapse or if it was simply, that's the first one, that's the south tower collapsing, and that was about a half hour, give or take, after the planes hit the tower. Then shortly after that, just as the smoke was starting to clear away, the second tower, and that's what you're looking at now. Again, this was not very long ago, 10, 15 minutes ago, the second tower. It almost looks like one of those implosions of buildings that you see, except there is nothing controlled about this. This is devastation. How many people? There are 50,000 people who normally go to work in the Trade Center buildings. How many of those people had arrived already? How many of those people were trapped on the upper stories? How many of those people have been hurt? How many of those people died? We cannot tell you now. We can tell you that hospitals throughout the New York area are receiving literally hundreds of patients, and they are performing triage. They are trying to figure out who can be treated, who needs help first. This is sort of standard operating procedure. We are just being told now that Israel has evacuated all its diplomatic missions around the world. Israel has evacuated its missions. We are told now that Yasser Arafat has condemned these attacks, and we don't know yet who's behind them. Britain has condemned these attacks. Germany has convened its National Security Council, and we will check and see if events are going on in those places or if that is simply a reaction to what has gone on here in Washington and in New York. CNN's Gene Meserve joins us on the phone from Washington. Gene.
Hay Street, which is one of the major thoroughfares here in Washington, it is absolute gridlock. It takes about 15 minutes to drive one block. Ordinarily, this time of day, there'd be nothing near this kind of traffic. You see pedestrians filling the sidewalks, many of the businesses and offices here having closed. You see cars absolutely pouring out of the parking lots, contributing to the absolutely horrendous traffic situation. Many people trying to use their cell phones. However, cell phone service has become very difficult in this town because of the crush on circuits. For the most part, people appear to be very calm and collected. I will tell you, though, that as I drove, I looked at the car next to me full of some young women who I would guess were in their 20s, several of them crying their eyes out, obviously very upset as they listened to the radio and heard the news of what is happening in this city in New York also. Aaron, back to you.
Gene, thanks. Gene Reserve in Washington this morning as she and the rest of the organization continues to gather what facts we can, what facts are available in the wake of the extraordinary chaos that has followed this extraordinarily horrendous terrorist attack. American Airlines, we are told, one of the planes involved in this was a hijacked American Airlines 767 out of Logan Airport in Boston. American Airlines will say what is known as you look at the White House being evacuated a short time ago, or is that live? And I'm not sure on my monitor which it is. I believe it's taped from a short time ago. In any case, American Airlines will talk to reporters in about a half hour or so, 11:30 Eastern Time. One of its planes involved in this, and we will bring that press conference to you live when it happens. Here in New York, hospitals are being overwhelmed as hundreds of patients are being brought in and being treated. We cannot tell you, we would not even begin to guess what the numbers in this will be, how many people will have died by the time this day is over, how many injuries have taken place in both Washington and New York. But as former Police Commissioner Howard Safer told us a few moments ago, obviously the numbers are going to be extraordinary. Who do we have on the phone, guys? Just help me out here. Patty, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
What do you got?
About an hour ago, I was on the corner of Broadway and Park Place. That's about 1,000 yards from the World Trade Center. When the first tower collapsed, it was a massive explosion. At the time, the police were trying desperately to evacuate people from the area. When that explosion occurs, it was like a scene out of a horror film. People started stampeding away from it.
Patty, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We told you there was a second plane that went down, this one around 80 miles or so southeast of Pittsburgh. We'll try now to connect with KTTV-TV in Pittsburgh. Well, just so much for planning. We will try again.